Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Emily and today we're going to talk about my top 5 books from winter. So I got this idea from Reagan at Peruse Project. She is one of the first booktubers I ever followed, and she sort of wraps up each season talking about all the books she read over the course of 3 months and then the top 5 from there. I figured that's a fun video to make and something I want to start on my channel, so thank you to Reagan for the inspiration, and let's jump into the books. So the first book I read in December was Illuminae by Jay Kristoff and Amy Kaufman, and I gave this 4 stars. The Da Vinci Code by Dan Brown, and I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. The Particular Sadness of Lemon Cake by Amy Bender, which I gave 3 out of 5 stars. The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna, and if I could, I would give this 10 out of 5 stars. We'll talk more later. And finally for December, and finally for 2017, I read The Young Queens, which is a novella in the 3 Dark Crowns series, and I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars. So to start off 2018, I read The Power by Naomi Alderman, and I gave this 4 stars. Turtles All the Way Down by John Green, and I gave this one also 4 out of 5 stars. The Murder of Roger Ackroyd by Agatha Christie, and I gave this 3 out of 5 stars. Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo, and I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. Promise Me Dad by Joe Biden, which I gave 4.5 out of 5 stars. The next is an audiobook, and that is The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss, which I gave 4 out of 5 stars. The Cruel Prince by Holly Black, and I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis, and gave this 4 stars. The Woman in the Window by A.J. Finn, and gave this 4 out of 5 stars. Crooked Kingdom, the second and final in the Six of Crows duology by Leigh Bardugo, and gave this 5 out of 5 stars. Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda by Becky Albertalli, and gave this 5 out of 5 stars. The English Wife by Lauren Willig, which I gave 2.5 or 3 stars out of 5 stars. Okay, so now that we've gone through the whole list, let's dive into each book individually so I can chat a little bit more about why I enjoyed it and why I would recommend it. First one to talk about is The Da Vinci Code by Dan Brown. I know, I also can't believe I hadn't read this before December of 2017, but here we are, I've read it now, it's amazing. In case you are also living under a rock and aren't aware of what The Da Vinci Code is about, so this is the second book in the Robert Langdon series. I don't think you necessarily need to read them in order. I didn't read whatever comes before this, Angels and Demons, I believe, though now I want to. They all kind of act as standalone books, but they all follow Professor Robert Langdon, who is a symbologist from Harvard. In the Da Vinci Code, we find him in Paris, and he gets a late-night phone call from the police, I believe, telling them that the curator of the Louvre was just found murdered. But it's a really intense crime scene, really horrifying, and it seems like this curator has left a message. And they bring Langdon in as a symbologist to try to decipher it, as well as French cryptologist Sophie, and they become sort of our duo that we follow throughout this story. From there, we follow Langdon and Sophie trying to figure out all of the clues to figure out what the curator was trying to say and the secrets that he is trying to preserve. It's very suspenseful. I do have to brag, I figured out one of the answers to the clues before Sophie and Langdon did, so feeling pretty good about that. Still riding that high from December. I highly recommend picking this up if you haven't, and if you have, let me know some of your other favorite Dan Brown books because I would love to try out some more soon. Okay. Next, we have my all-time favorite book from 2017, and definitely up there on favorite books ever, The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. This takes place in World War II France, right after the Germans occupy Paris, and then the smaller towns and cities throughout France. This story follows sisters Vienne and Isabelle, who have 2 very different experiences of the war in France and see themselves having very different roles within all of the turmoil that's happening. And we also get some chapters from, I think, the 1990s. One of the sisters' first-person perspective talking about the war past. You don't know which sister it is, and so you spend the entire book kind of trying to figure it out. Both of them are very inspiring characters in very different ways, and they both have such a huge impact on this story. Obviously, it's a fictional story. These aren't actual sisters who lived through World War II, but this is devastating and so inspiring and uplifting, and it's seriously just one of the most beautiful books I've ever read. If you haven't read it, you need to, especially if you love historical fiction. Literally cannot recommend this enough. I can't wait to reread this someday soon. I'm trying to give myself enough time to, distance myself and come back and just be swept up in it again. I already made my fiance read it, and he even cried at the end, so you know. Okay, so I'm actually really proud. We've got 4 different genres represented through these 5 books, and I kind of feel like I tend to be stuck in my YA fantasy rut, but it was only these 2 that fit that bill. So Six of Crows follows 6 main characters who are all very flawed, criminals, thieves. They are not perfect people, and they totally recognize that and are happy to own up to it. They are commissioned to perform an impossible heist and hopefully get lots of money for it. Kaz Brecker is the ringleader, and he is fantastic. He has, pretty questionable morals, but he brings together a really dynamic team of young people. And what I love about this book, there are a lot of things I love. This is a really diverse cast of characters. So this doesn't take place in our world, obviously. However, it is inspired by it. We have characters of different races and ethnicities, sexualities, religions, and they all come together and are able to work together really well, and they know what they need to do. This is told third-person point of view, but it's really interesting because Kaz does not tell all of the details to the entirety of the plan to each of the team members. He just tells them what they need to know, which means that we're surprised along the way because we get some chapters from Kaz, but not where he'll explicitly give the entire plan. So you're constantly surprised. There are so many twists and turns, and I absolutely loved it. It actually took me a little while to really get into it. I had to pick it up a couple different times before I was really in, but once I was in, and I am done. I will now forever read everything that Leigh Bardugo writes, and I love this book. And then, of course, number 4 is Crooked Kingdom, also by Leigh Bardugo. I will not go into a synopsis of this because it is the second and final book in this duology, and no spoilers, but I can say that you learn so much about the 6 characters, their pasts and their motivations, and you just get so much more depth from each of them, and they really do grow as characters, both in themselves and in their relationships with each other, which is so amazing. There are definitely some romances in it, but I loved them. There are also really good friendships, and those are focused on just as much as the romances, which I really appreciate. This ending left me with lots of questions in a good way, but I'm not going to say anything because I don't want to spoil anything. I just want you to read these books if YA fantasy is your thing. Someone needs to read it so I can discuss at length my love for each of the characters. Okay, and the last one is one that I actually got from the library, so I don't have a physical copy, but it is Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda by Becky Albertalli. And this follows our main character, Simon, who is a pretty typical high schooler, except he is gay and still closeted. He hasn't told anyone except for one person that he met on his high school's Tumblr page, who posted something about being gay but not being able to talk about it or something to that effect, and Simon responds and they start this anonymous correspondence over email. So neither of them knows who the other is. So Simon goes by Jacques and his friend goes by Blue. Simon is quickly falling in love with Blue. They have these really adorable email conversations just about every other chapter. So the main chapters are telling Simon's story. They're going through his I think junior year of high school, and the school musical and his friendships. But the biggest plot point is that someone has found these emails that he is sending back and forth with Blue and is now blackmailing him. This student, Martin, has found these emails and is using them against Simon as a way to try to get in with Abby, the new girl that Simon has befriended. It causes a lot of stress for Simon because he doesn't want to put that on Abby, but he also doesn't want anyone to know. It's not so much that he doesn't want anyone to know, but he just wants to come out himself. He wants to be in control of that. This is just a really adorable story and the cutest romance. I literally was grinning from ear to ear the entire time that I was reading this. I encourage you to read Simon versus Homo Sapiens Agenda if you like YA contemporary stories, and it's also a really lovely romance and a good, again, diverse cast of characters, which I always appreciate. So give it a try. I think you'll really like it. That is everything that I read in winter, so December, January, and February, and my top 5 favorites from that time period. I'm really proud of my winter reading. I read 17 books, which is probably the most I've ever read in a 3-month time span. If you haven't already watched my video of my March TBR, I will link that down below or up in the card so you can watch that and see what I'm hoping to read this month. And if you have any suggestions based on my favorites from winter, please leave them in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed watching this. I enjoyed making it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and I will see you in my next video. Bye. Use fake names, so Simon goes by something French. Ah, Jacques. I'm really rambling now. This is told third person point of view. No!